So I'll say this clearly. Faith doesn't cancel your feelings, okay? And suppressing your pain is not spiritual. You are allowed to have faith and still be able to feel not so great for a period of time, right? Of course, you don't want that to go on forever. But after divorce, there is a period where you are allowed to not think of yourself as a bad woman or bad Christian because you're having these feelings like the hurt, the sadness, the anger, all of those things, because I think that's completely normal. And if you don't process that first, I feel like it'll definitely come up at a later point. And I think a lot of women go straight into survival mode and they think, I just have to go gangbusters ahead. I have to take care of my kids. I got to figure out my finances. I got to go, 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 go. And then at some point, all those feelings that you didn't really allow yourself to feel, I mean, even though you think you're kind of skipping over that part, trust me, they will bubble up at some point. If you're tired of living in survival mode and questioning your worth and faith after divorce and want simple steps to heal, drop that shame and guilt, and rebuild your confidence, you're in the right place. Hey, I'm Lori Ann, certified Christian life coach and midlife divorce mom of 2. I learned the secret of how to heal after divorce and rebuild my life through faith-based strategies that changed everything. And if you're ready to remember who you truly are, rediscover your purpose in midlife, love well again, and care for your body and soul, welcome to the club. You're in the right room. Hey, friend, and welcome back to the Midlife Comeback Club Podcast. I'm so glad you're back here to listen. I drop a new episode every Monday and Thursday of the week. And I just want to say thank you so much for always coming back to listen. Since I've launched the podcast, the response has been phenomenal. And I'm so glad that you're helping this podcast reach more women who absolutely need this. So, quick question. Have you ever tried to just pray away your feelings? Like, God, I'll give this to you, and also, I would really not like to feel like this anymore. Amen. Right? Yeah, we're going to talk about that today, because if you've ever felt like having emotions somehow makes you feel like you're a bad Christian and you're just supposed to have more faith instead of having any feelings and just magically feel better because you do just have more faith, but you're not quite sure why you're still having the feelings, this episode is absolutely for you. And if you've ever been stuck in that cycle, just really trying to be strong after divorce and trying to have the faith, but really secretly you're kind of just feeling overwhelmed, that's exactly why I created the Midlife Comeback Club, which is my annual group coaching membership where all of us women gather together who are healing after divorce, trying to figure out their way toward the future that God actually has planned for them, and discovering which phase they're in, whether that's survival phase, clarity phase, or the rising phase, and really learning the faith-based strategies that I have and using my framework to really change their lives. Inside, you'll get my free 90-day transformational program inside of the membership, which is really awesome. It's included. And we also have weekly live group coaching calls every week for Q&A, whatever's on your heart, you can bring it to the call. And you're just surrounded by this amazing group of women who understand what you're going through. And our goal is to have you heal, get you out of survival phase when it's your time to get out of survival phase, move into clarity, and start launching your comeback and moving toward that great, amazing life that God has planned for you. So I just want to throw that out there. Definitely check it out in the show notes. And you can also take my free divorce recovery quiz, which is really great too, because that'll really clarify for you what phase you're in now and some tools and resources that can help you very much. So check that out down below. All right. So let's get into it today. We're talking, just about something that I think a lot of Christian women experience after divorce, but they don't always talk about. It's kind of like my favorite topic on the podcast, the things we don't always talk about, right? But we're talking about it here because I feel like it needs to be brought to light. A lot of these different topics that are kind of taboo in Christian culture, and we don't really like to share that we might be having these different feelings. But when really women are out there struggling and trying to get their life together after divorce, and it just helps, I think, to share with what maybe I've walked through after divorce and what other women have experienced so that you know you're not alone. And then also give you the strategies to how you can move forward. Because somewhere, I think along the way, many of us were just taught that simple thing, right? If you have enough faith, you shouldn't feel this way. And so when you're feeling like sad or when you're angry after divorce or when you're completely confused why your life turned out this way and you're really hurt, you start thinking things like, I just need to pray more, right? Or I just need to trust God more. What's wrong with me? I shouldn't still be feeling like this. But in reality, we are allowed to have these feelings. They are going to come up because our thoughts create our feelings, right? Which our feelings create our actions, and our actions create the life that we have, right? And we do want to hold those thoughts captive at some point when we're believing lies about ourselves and not what the word says about us, of course. But there is a period where, we're not supposed to be suppressing our pain after divorce and not allowing ourselves to feel anything. That's a normal human reaction after you go through something as traumatizing as a divorce. And so before you know it, if you keep doing this to yourself, you're not actually healing. You're just suppressing what you're feeling. And you're calling it something else, which is you're calling it faith. Like, I'm having faith, I'm trusting in God, but I'm ignoring the way I'm feeling. And you're kind of skipping over the part that needs to be felt so that you can move through those feelings and move forward, right? So I'll say this clearly. Faith doesn't cancel your feelings, okay? And suppressing your pain is not spiritual. You are allowed to have faith and still be able to feel not so great for a period of time, right? Of course, you don't want that to go on forever. But after divorce, there is a period where, you are allowed to not think of yourself as a bad woman or a bad Christian because you're having these feelings like the hurt, the sadness, the anger, all of those things. Because I think that's completely normal. And if you don't process that first, I feel like it'll definitely come up at a later point. And I think a lot of women go straight into survival mode and they think, I just have to go gangbusters ahead. I have to take care of my kids. I got to figure out my finances. I got to go, 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 go. And then at some point, all those feelings that you didn't really allow yourself to feel, even though you think you're kind of skipping over that part, trust me, they will bubble up at some point. So I'll just tell you what it looked like for me. After divorce, I was trying so hard just to be strong. And I was in that survival mode. The kind of strong where you like not trying to cry too much in front of people. You're trying to just look like you got it all together for your kids, for your family, for your friends, to look like, I'm okay. I'm going to move forward. I'm going. And you're saying like all the right Christian things. Like, I know there's a better plan for my life. I'm trusting God. I know He's got this. I'm fine. The real spoiler is you're not fine. You just gone through something really traumatic. Your whole life that you thought was going to be one way, it took a 180, and all of a sudden you found yourself in this other land over here where you're having to navigate where you're going. And I remember there was one day specifically when I went to this brunch, and it was like a really nice restaurant, and they had a full buffet, and a lot of people were there that I didn't really know. I knew a couple people sort of well, but there's a lot of people I didn't really know. But it was this event and my friends were going to it, and I thought, okay, I will join. I hadn't been going out that much to different things. And I thought, okay, this is good. I'm going to get out of the house and go. And I went through the buffet line, and then all of a sudden there they were. You know what that was? It was cheesy eggs. Sounds stupid, right? But cheesy eggs were like my favorite in high school specifically. And my dad was not a good cook, but occasionally he would get up on the weekend or maybe once in a while, really early before we were going to school. And if he had time, he would cook these cheesy eggs, and he would like let them simmer. And it was like this whole thing. And he put probably tons of butter in them and they were just amazing, right? But it was just kind of this once in a while thing. For the most part, my mom did like all the cooking, but that was kind of his one thing. That, and I think grilled cheese. He made some awesome grilled cheese. But the cheesy egg thing was always just like my dad's thing. And something just triggered me the minute I saw them sitting there in the buffet line. I put some on my plate and I just started bawling and I started crying because my dad had passed away a few years prior to this event. And I just couldn't stop crying. And so I like carry my plate back to the table. And everybody's looking at me like, what's wrong with this girl? And I couldn't stop crying. It was just one of these uncontrollable moments where I couldn't stop, but I wanted to sit at the table and I was trying to kind of hold back my tears, but my face was getting red and it was super embarrassing. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, tried to get myself together and came back and it just started happening again. And so finally I just ate real quick and I said, I'm sorry, I have to go. And I just got out of there. But it was kind of embarrassing, because like I didn't really want to sit there and explain about the cheesy eggs and the connection to my dad. But it just triggered something in me. And all of that grief came back to me like years after my father had passed away. And I hadn't cried about him outright in a very long time. And I think it was just one of those moments where the grief came bubbling up. It was the sadness, the frustration that he wasn't there anymore. And just see my kids grow up and just like the overwhelm of all of it and remembering like the good moments that I did have with him. And my immediate first reaction was like, nope, get it together, Lorianne. We're not doing this here, And so I did what I thought I was supposed to do. And I just started laying silently to myself as I was sitting at that table with all these people kind of talking, but they're kind of looking at me at the same time. And I was just thinking in my head, I'm just giving God like some honest, messy prayer. And I'm saying, God, please take this feeling away right now. This is not perfect timing. I shouldn't be feeling like this right now at this event. Help me just move on already. All right. But I realized something later that I really wasn't bringing my feelings to God. I was just trying to get rid of them, right? Hoping it would just go away before I ever let Jesus see them, right? It's like I didn't want to sit there and feel all the things that clearly grief is like that. It just comes out of nowhere, even years later. And I feel like divorce is the same kind of thing. And especially for Christian women, it seems like we're usually in the survival phase initially. Or we're like having to keep it together for our kids. We're having to maybe go get a job for the first time. We're having to handle all the finances. We're taking care of a house or moving to an apartment or whatever it looks like for you, where you're trying to handle maybe all of these things that you feel like you're a single woman now or single mom, and you're trying to gather yourself together to handle all these things that you never had to do all of before. And I think we move past during that phase a lot of the feelings because we just don't have the time, or we'll break down, in the shower or when we're driving alone, like I've said before, like that was happening to me, but I would keep it together for everybody else. And I was just kind of suppressing any pain that I might have been feeling and not really allowing myself to have those moments. And the one thing I want you to understand is that having faith doesn't cancel out your feelings. You can still have faith that Jesus is going to work all of this together for good in your life, but also still have that moment of being allowed to have your feelings. Like for me, it was, realizing I still had this extreme grief over the loss of my dad years later, just because I was triggered by the cheesy eggs on the buffet line, And I think a lot of the time that can also happen divorce. Like if you don't allow yourself that season of feeling the feelings and being aware of it and knowing, yeah, you can't sit there forever in your sadness and depression, but you do want to allow yourself a little bit of time to be able to say, hey, I've been through a really difficult season. I'm going through this season right now after my divorce, and I need to give myself the time to feel how I'm feeling so that I can really experience maybe that traumatic grief that you're going through after losing the person you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with. And then taking the faithful steps forward to move your life in the right direction. But I think a lot of women get this wrong, and they think suppressing their pain after divorce makes them really spiritual and really godlike because they're just having faith, but they're not allowing themselves that season of feeling that sadness. So today I just want to go through 3 really powerful points I feel that I want you to know about what this can do if you do suppress your feelings. And number 1, it doesn't make you faithful if you're suppressing your feelings. It just keeps you stuck. So a lot of women think, okay, if I ignore this, like I kind of did, for example, with the loss of my father, and I was so busy with my kids were super little and I was trying to raise them. I was trying to get my job. I was trying to handle all the things, a move. It'll just go away, right? Or if I have enough faith that I won't feel this way. But the real truth is that what you suppress, you think by ignoring it, it's going to disappear, but it doesn't disappear. It doesn't become invisible. It just shows up later, like it did for me on the buffet line, And in like all of that overthinking and your anxiety and your irritability and just probably like complete emotional exhaustion, right? You're not avoiding it. You're just storing it somewhere inside. And you're going to have to access it at some point later. It's going to come up for you. And eventually it just comes out in ways that you don't expect. So instead of maybe asking yourself, how do I stop feeling like this? Maybe the better question is, what is this feeling that I'm experiencing trying to show me, right? What is this feeling? For me, when I saw the cheesy eggs from my dad, it was showing me that, wow, I really miss those memories, even though maybe they were few and far between for me, of those special little moments I had here or there with my dad. My dad wasn't around that much. He worked a lot. Our schedules were a lot different. And I wish I had a lot of regret about things that I could have done better as his daughter. And I'm sure he felt the same way as a dad. But I know now that he did the very best he could as a father, and he worked to provide for the family. But I always looked at that as being, he's working so much because he doesn't want to be with us. But that wasn't the case. And as you get older, you understand those things. And I wish that as I had, reached my adult years and into my 20s and 30s, that I had made the time to spend more quality time with him and not gotten so busy with my own life, my own family, and specific events that had happened that I just didn't make the time I think that he was trying to make with me at that point to kind of rectify our relationship and become closer to me. And all of that bubbled up for me, like on the buffet line, like wishing he was here to see my kids growing up and to be able to experience, he did for a short time, but to be able to fully experience seeing my kids grow up as being their grandfather. And that was just a real eye opener for me, because I thought I'd kind of gotten past it, that I had moved on years after he had passed, but it clearly wasn't the case. And I think this happens. It's an example of how the same kind of thing can happen with the divorce. So if you don't deal with the feelings you're having now after losing your spouse and having to recreate this entirely new life that you weren't expecting, that those feelings will bubble up later. So number 2, I think even Jesus, had emotions, and he didn't suppress what he was feeling. And I think we should talk about this, because if anyone could have just had more faith, right, and moved on, it definitely was Jesus. And yet John 11:35, it says, Jesus wept. It's the shortest verse in the Bible, but it's so powerful. He knew what he was about to do, right? He knew he was going to go to raise Lazarus from the dead, but he still cried. And he didn't say, oh, I shouldn't be feeling like this. Let me just push this down and not get upset about this. He really felt it, even though he knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, right? And then in the Garden of Gethsemane, Matthew 26:38, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Now, talk about overwhelmed, right? That doesn't sound like someone suppressing their emotions. He was experiencing how he was feeling and what he was about to go do, thinking about that, right? And that really sounds like someone expressing them honestly. So if Jesus didn't suppress his emotions, why do we think that we're supposed to? That's what I want to ask you. We are allowed to have those moments as women after divorce. Hey, just break down, have that feeling, let it out, experience what you're feeling so that you can process your emotions to then, take the faithful steps of action forward. But if you do it in that order, that you won't be going backwards years later and revisiting the feelings you should have been experiencing right after you are going through a divorce or right after your divorce has happened. And number 3, God is not asking you for this polished faith. He's really just asking for you to be honest with him. And I'm a big proponent of this because I know growing up, when I went to church, it was like a certain way you had to pray, and there were certain things you had to say before you could even say the prayer that you were supposed to say. And it was really confusing. I thought, can't I just go directly to Jesus and tell him and have this personal relationship with him to explain to him how I'm feeling, talk to him when I'm alone, explain my worries, my concerns, my anger, my hurt, my sadness, whatever it is, and just bring it to him. Because if we're supposed to have this personal relationship with him, I thought that's how relationships kind of work, right? And it will change everything for you when you think about it like that. Because a lot of women will think, I need to come to God with my faith and not tell him about how I'm feeling because that might not look good because I'm not really doing great right now. But I mean, have you read the Psalms? David is out there saying things like, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? In Psalm 13:1, right? Like, that's not polished. And he was David. And that's being honest. I mean, David was questioning, right? He was really wrestling with his faith, and you could feel it in the Psalms, right? He was feeling the things he didn't want to be feeling. And God did not reject him, did he? No, he received it. And he understood how David was feeling. And he ended up crowning him anyway. And relationship really requires that honesty, I think, in order to have an authentic personal relationship that Jesus wants us to have with him. So stop filtering your feelings before bringing them to God. You can come to him, bring all that anger that you're feeling, bring the confusion that you're going through, bring all the tears, all the sadness, right? Because that's where your healing's actually going to start. And then you won't find yourself years later wondering, why am I breaking down at the buffet line? Because you never took the time to process the feelings that Jesus was wanting you to experience at the time, either during your divorce or after your divorce. And they're coming up years later. And of course, at times we're going to have that. That's how grief works, Of course, that's going to happen from time to time. But I know women that suppress their feelings like it's going out of style and that they just plow through for years. And you look at them and you think, wow, did they never even stop for a second to process what happened to them? And then I see them a decade later and they're having their breakdown because they never allowed themselves that season to really feel. And I think as Christian women, we believe that it's not spiritual to be having these feelings because we're supposed to have faith that God is going to work all things together for good for us, which we do. We have that faith somewhere deep down, right? We have that mustard seed of faith, even if that's all we've got after divorce. It's there. But, Jesus understands that you're allowed to have this season where you're really processing the feelings, especially when you're going through a divorce or right after. I mean, it's a heavy thing to walk through. And if you allow yourself that space and time, I've seen the women that do that in my coaching practice, I've seen them just flourish a couple years later because they didn't give themselves that pressure to not allow themselves to experience those feelings. They sat with those feelings of hurt. They sat with the anger. And then they were able to really get themselves back together again because they allowed themselves to say, yeah, that really hurt. Yeah, that was really difficult. Yeah, I was not doing well during that time. But they brought their concerns to God in prayer and learned how to work through those seasons with faith-based strategies that allowed them the season to just really sit with it and heal. And then when it came time to launch their divine comeback after walking through the divorce, it made things a lot easier because they gave themselves that space. And then they were just ready to rise and ready to do what it was that God called them to do. So if you realize that, hey, yeah, I've been calling this faith, but I've actually just been avoiding how I actually feel, you're not alone. And you're not doing it wrong. It's just usually human nature as women, because we just want to take care of everybody and take care of everything quickly and try to nurture everybody. And then we forget to nurture ourselves. So inside the Midlife Comeback Club, this is exactly the kind of stuff that we work through. It's my annual group coaching membership where you're surrounded by this community of women who are walking the same exact path as you. You get live weekly group coaching calls with me, your certified Christian life coach. Every week we do a Q&A. You can bring all your questions to me, whatever's on your heart, and we work through it together. And we allow like your thoughts. And then we allow those thoughts to become feelings, right? That you may be experiencing. And then we show you how to bring the feelings, into faith-filled steps of action that can really, over time, moves your life into this amazing trajectory of where you really want to go and where God wants you to go now. And if you are a member of the annual group coaching membership, I also include my entire 90-day transformational course, Crush Your Divine Comeback Girl, for free. So if you're in the annual group coaching membership, you get it for free. And I'm telling you, so many women's lives just completely changed within 90 days. They have jump-started their path to the most divine comeback ever. And even the ones that I thought, well, I'm not sure if she's really ready, or if she's really ready to do the work that's required to take the steps forward to move her life into this new season. I've been blown away by what these women do and the hard work that they put in on themselves. And that's the key. It's like taking the time for yourself. Often we don't take the time for ourselves. We give our time to everybody around us, to our kids, to our family, to our friends, to everybody else who needs us. But we forget to take care of ourselves first. And God always says that it's so important to take care of your mind, your body, and your soul. He wants us to take care of us first so that we can then give ourselves to everybody else. And it took me so long to figure that out. And that's part of what I teach inside the coaching membership. And I really would love for you to join us because it will just help you process these emotions you might be having. It will help you rebuild all of your confidence again and strengthen your faith, I think, in a way that's actually real and not forced. Like you don't have to force it. It's just going to be authentic and real. And you'll experience your faith, I think, in a way that you've never experienced it before. I know it happened for me, and that's how I developed this framework for all of you because I'm so passionate about not letting women get stuck the way I did for years, wandering around the wilderness, trying to figure this out. And when I started to unlock the keys that God was giving me on how to help women get there so much faster and how I got my life turned around so quickly, I couldn't help but shout it from the rooftops to all of you. So if you're ready to stop just pretending you're fine and really start launching your divine comeback and actually start, healing for real, I would love for you to come join us. So check that link out in the show notes, okay? And today, girl, I just want to leave you with this. Your feelings are not a sign that your faith is weak. They're just simply a sign that you're human. And healing doesn't come from just ignoring them and pretending you're not feeling. It comes from really facing them, experiencing those feelings with God, and then moving forward. So I just want to thank you so much for coming back here to listen every week. I'm enjoying doing this podcast for you because I feel like it gives me a voice to help you move forward in your own life and not get stuck the way that I did. And I just want to say I'm super grateful. So I hope that you have an awesome week, and I will see you here in the next episode. Thanks for listening. Hey girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if so, would you take 30 seconds and share it with a woman who might really need it right now? Also, please leave me a quick review over on Apple Podcasts. It truly helps this show reach more women who are ready for their divine comeback. And until next time, keep choosing faith over fear, and I will meet you back here next week for another episode.